Hi everyone, welcome to THD, and today this is our first impression of the card from Secret of Power Part 6. This video is sponsored by Card Market, the best marketplace to buy and sell cards in Europe. Moving directly to my quotation system, always keep in mind that I haven't played with any of those cards, so those are very much first impressions. I'm either not excited, not sure, I think the card is likely to be good, or I think the card is likely to be amazing. And that's our red cards. Moving on, we got the Emissary Sheathipede, which is a 2/4 in space for 2, which is something we've never seen before in Star Wars Unlimited. We got a 3/5 for 2, but that cannot attack unless it's used with Kazuda. This one is, in my opinion, another great addition to the Kazuda deck. Kazuda has already access to a lot of great 3 drops like Fireball and the other spaceship I was just talking about. This one, obviously not as big of a stat, but also the downside if it gets defeated is not that big of a deal. In my opinion, I think this card is also likely to see play in other space aggro deck. I think the downside of having the opponent ready a resource when if it gets defeated is often going to be difficult for your opponent to exploit. And if it does manage to exploit it, I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. So the when defeated effect is not that big of a deal. However, the 2/4 for 2 stat line is really, really nice. It's more likely to survive, really good once again for those pilot aggro decks. So yeah, this is either going to be a great card for maybe some Vader aggro might actually want to use this because it's a 2-drop that doesn't get defeated. It's great in all sort of Kazuda decks, so I think it's a good card. I would definitely give this a thumbs up. Moving on, we got Teeth Security. I'm not a big fan of this card. I think that so the stat line is already really bad. The one play effect is powerful if your opponent managed to get an upgraded unit on turn 1, which can happen with 2 shielded and stuff. The thing is, like, my view on this card is that in a lot of cases it's just not gonna trigger, and when it does trigger, the bonus that you're gonna get from it is very small. So yeah, once again the floor of this card is very low because then it basically is just a 2/3 for 2 vanilla. And the ceiling, we mean that how powerful the card is whenever your opponent actually has an upgraded unit in play is not that big. Then you just end up being with a 3/4, 2/3, or you can put an experience token to another unit, which I don't think is good enough. Moving on, we got this a new legendary called Dryden Voss. This guy basically double its attack's power whenever it attacks. So basically it has raid 2, sort of, so it's kind of like a raid 2 2/5 for 4, but obviously this scales up as you upgrade Dryden Voss to become bigger. You can scale it to become like an absolute monster. The fact that it's 2 health means that you can untap it with Grand Inquisitor, but even in the perfect circumstances, I think this card is extremely underpowered. So I just want to compare it to Quinlan Voss just to give you an idea on how underpowered this card is. In order to make Dryden Voss basically have the same, so if you put a Deal Blaster on Quinlan Voss, he's going to be basically swinging for 8. If you give if you do the same for Dryden Voss, he's going to swing to 8. If you give anything more than it, if you give an attack bonus that goes beyond +2, then Dryden Voss start attacking for more. But it's not so easy to do, first of all, and second of all, there's tons of other downsides that this card has. For example, Quinlan Voss does not only boost its attack, it actually deals damage to the enemy base, which gives you the flexibility to attack a unit and then deal 2 damage to base. You rarely need to use that unit, that extra damage on the enemy units. So the fact that Quinlan Voss has the flexibility to actually attack a unit for 6 and then deal 2 damage to another to the base is actually nicer than just having everything bulk up on the power attack itself. So that's actually another upside of Quinlan. But not only that, I think the biggest advantage of Quinlan Voss is that he's a 4/5, meaning that if your opponent wants to deal with it, he's going to have to suffer 4 damage back. It's going to be more annoying to deal with, and if by any chance you don't find a way to boost the attack, then Quinlan Voss is actually going to hit hard, because 4/5 is actually a pretty decent start line for 4 drops. So obviously if you build a deck around Dryden Voss using Grand Inquisitor and all this, Dryden Voss can be good, but I just think it's just too easy to interact with by the time your opponent the unit has no immediate impact on the game. If you use Grand Inquisitor, then the card becomes extremely vulnerable. And if you manage to make it work, it's going to deal a big slap in the opponent's face, but it's not even that spectacular to begin with. So it's obviously a combo card that you really want to abuse his ability, but abusing his ability is going to be very difficult. And in my opinion, in 99% of the case, you would just rather play Dryden Voss instead. I just don't think it's a good enough card, unfortunately. Moving on, we got the Defense Fleet X-Wing. This is certainly a card for draft. There's no reason to play this in Constructed. If you're playing Heroism, you get access to the Concord Dawn Interceptor, which is so much better. The +2 attack in defense is so incredibly relevant. And if you're running Villainy, you would rather play the Supremacy Tie, which can actually kill something on the defense as well with a 3/3 stat line, which is just so much better than 1/4. And of course, the fact that you can grab it from Vader, Vader, Commander of the First Legion, is also pretty relevant as well. No reason to play this card in Constructed. Moving on, we got Covert Operative. This card is just not particularly impressive. It only captures very, very small units, and the stat line for 4-drop is abysmal. If you compare this to Sanctioner Shuttle, it's just so much worse. Sanctioner Shuttle will capture bigger units, and it will also operate in space, which makes it more difficult to interact with, and it also is cheaper. Obviously, Sanctioner Shuttles has the coordinate keyword, so you can only play in specific decks, but Sanctioner Shuttle is just a million times better. Obviously, they're not in the same colors, and one requires coordinate, but I just think that Covert Operative is just overcosted for what it does. Next, we got Lone Shark. As far as 4-drop ambush, there's just better options out there. Whether you are in Heroism or in Villainy, if you're in Heroism, you got the Cohort, which is basically a 4/4, a 2/4 raid 2 4/4, so it has one less health, but one more raid, which for an ambush unit is far more relevant, I feel like. And even this card doesn't really see play anymore. And if you're playing Villainy, you have 4 LOM, which is a 4/4 ambush for 4 Villainy with the Underworld keyword, which we know is very relevant. And even this card only sees plays in Cad Bane. So, and he also has the ability that the combo with Zuckuss as well. So yeah, this card it's going to be solid in draft, but in Constructed, I don't think it's good enough. Moving on, we got the Academy Disciplinarian. This card is actually pretty interesting. It has a decent stat line for 3-drop, and it has an immediate impact on the game, with an ability that I think can be really powerful if you combine it with those Grit 1/4s, which we have quite a few of. Those Grit 2-drops. So you basically untap them. You untap them, and then you ready them, and you make them stronger. It works also with Scout Bike Pursuer. So maybe this deck could find some space in some sort of maybe Grand Inquisitor. I don't think it's good in Grand Inquisitor because Grand Inquisitor has this ability basically built in. But maybe some aggro decks can make use of this. And once again, the stat line that you get with the unit on top of this is actually pretty nice. He also has Imperial Officials, which are 2 relevant traits. So I don't know exactly what kind of deck you would want to play this, but I think there are decks that can use that. Moving on, we got the Dressilian Commandos. And this guy is actually quite nice. So 4/5 for 5 ambush is no longer considered to be amazing. We remember like Bosk, for example, who has this plus additional upsides. The problem I have with this is so 4/5, but Bosk really doesn't see much play anymore, except in Cad Bane because of the Underworld keyword. But what makes this card interesting, the fact that he has plot, obviously. This means that you can deploy your leader and get that ambush in the same motion. Most of the competitive leaders in the game deploy on 5, so you get to deploy your 5 leaders, and then you get to... So it is at the same time card advantage because you're playing this from plot, and it also is action cheating. You're playing a card and you're deploying your leader in one motion, and I think that can be really valuable. It also has 2 relevant traits, Rebel or Troopers, so I think this card has a chance to see play. It's going to be mostly based on around like plot specific leaders and leaders that can use the so I think there's ways to use this card, and I think there's once again, of course, it's going to depend on the meta. Right now we have mostly people want to play with the proliferation of 2/4s. 4/4s are becoming more popular, especially 4/4 for 3s. So this can counter this quite well. This can pick up those cards quite well, as well as leaving a body on the board. So yeah, I think this card is can see play. Next, we got a new leader. It is the Bail Organa doing everything he can. And this leader is one of the most interesting leaders that we've seen so far. So far, most of the leaders we've seen were either very underpowered or simply just not very interesting. This leader definitely is very, very interesting and very unique. So first of all, just like Admiral Trench, Bail Organa has the ability to be deployed multiple times a turn. His action to deploy is not an epic action, meaning you can deploy any numbers of time. And as opposed to Admiral Trench, you don't actually have to spend resources to actually deploy Bail Organa. All you have to do is discard cards. So obviously discarding 2 cards from your hand is a significant cost, but it means that in terms of tempo, you can deploy Bail Organa and then play something that costs for a long time, and you can do this multiple times a turn, which I think is very powerful. So you're gonna have to find some sort of strategies to, of course, counteract the fact that you have to discard cards to use it. But I think that's not so difficult to do, because all you need to do is play plots, which is what the leader wants you to do anyway, because every time you play a card from your resources, you get to heal 1 damage from your base. So there's some incentive there. So obviously his stat line is not very high. The 3-3 is not great for a deployed leader. It's actually very weak. But once again, you get to deploy multiple times a turn, which completely changed the math and makes sense that you have this very relevant threat that you can deploy over and over again. His leader ability is not like the most relevant thing in the world, because I think the main objective with Bail is to try to deploy him as often as possible. So very often he's either going to be dead and exhausted, or he's going to be in play. So I don't think his leader ability is very relevant, but if ever you're in a situation where you don't have enough cards to actually deploy him, you can actually use an ability to actually draw a card. And it's actually very easy to draw a card from this, and it's actually better than drawing a card, because you get to pick a card from your resource row and put it in your hand, and then that card gets replaced afterwards. That means you actually get some choices on which card you can put back into your hand. So I think his leader ability is not something that ideally you want to use often, but in a situation where, let's say, you run out of card and you don't have anything plots to play, you don't have enough cards to actually deploy Bail, then actually you can use his ability to kind of fix that, which I think is very handy. So in my opinion, a lot of people have been comparing this leader to Trench, but I think he's very different than Trench. Trench is extremely slow and methodical. Bail Organa can actually deploy very, very quick. He heals damage from your base. So what I really like about Bail Organa is that he's going to be working great against aggro because of the early deploy and the fact that he heals your base whenever you play a card from your resources. And he's going to be really good against control because of his ability to deploy, to basically deploy over and over and over again. And once again, yes, you have to discard cards if you do it, but if pretty much you're playing with your plots, mostly based on plots, I don't think having to discard cards is that big of a deal. So overall, if I had to show you like the best plot cards to combine Bail Organa with, I would say Jar Jar Binks is definitely one up there. He gets to deploy, you get a 2-1 to protect against Paradoxide, and then you give Bail Organa +2/+2, which turns me from a 3-3 that doesn't really do much into a 5-5 that can pretty much do anything. Like a 5-5 on turn 3 can pretty much kill anything. Like there's not much units that would resist a 5-5. And also, of course, can go to base to be very aggressive. So if you get to deploy Jar Jar Binks, you're still going to have 2 resources left over for another plot, or for true cost card that you might play. And once again, the action cheating is also very significant for an aggressive deck, which I think this leader is most likely going to be. Another good one to play from plot is the Naboo Royal Starfighter. He gets to, once again, you deploy, you give Raid 2 and Overwhelmed, and suddenly your 3-3 becomes a 3-3 Raid 2, and once again, with 5 attack, this thing can pretty much kill anything it wants. So yeah, those are good examples of like really strong plots, but there are going to be others. Obviously, there's going to be many others, and I think that's going to be the main strategy with these leaders, to deploy him, find some sort of card that can boost his stats, and play the plots, so you don't have to play with your hand, you're basically playing plots, and you're healing as well at the same time, which is just great. Other things that really are going to be really powerful in combination with the leaders, and any leaders that can deploy multiple times, but I think it's specifically to do with Bail, because Bail, more than any other leaders in the game, is going to be deployed multiple times a game. And so any card that can basically give additional stats or additional bonuses when you deploy your leaders are going to be very powerful. So Post City, for example, gives a +1 health, so basically turns him into a 3-4 every time he deployed, which is a big deal. There's also Shadow Collective Camp, which many people consider to be absolutely unplayable. This card actually draws you a card whenever you deploy your leader, which is very handy with this leader, as often you're going to be discarding cards, you're going to be emptying your hand from the ability. This allows you to refill your hand for free. I mean, you do have to spend 5 HP on your base, but once again, you do this over and over again, that can be very powerful. There's also Droid Manufactory. This one is a bit more awkward because you got to play double green to make it work, but it's very, very potent to be able to get that effect every time your leader deploys, when you can do it multiple times a game. And then, of course, Patroneki Arena for the +1 attack bonus to turn your leader into a 4/3. That also works quite well. So overall, this leader, whether I think this leader is competitive or not, is very complicated. It really comes down to the amount of plots that we see. I think you need to have a critical mass of plot for this leader to work, to be able to use the ability to basically counteract the discard effect and the fact that you can use those plots multiple times a game, not only when your leader deploys, which is only supposed to be once per game. This leader can happen multiple times. So obviously, I don't think anybody, no matter how smart they are, can figure out if Battle Organa is competitive or not. It's going to come down, once again, we need to see more powerful plot cards and plots that work particularly well with Bail. So, and this is far from guaranteed. But if we do, then maybe it can be competitive, and even then, it's going to remain to be seen. But it's definitely a very cool and very original and interesting design. Moving on, we got 1 in a Million, which is it's a plot removal, which is very unique. We haven't seen any plot removal so far. Most of the plot cards have been either cards to kind of protect your leaders, or cards that allow you to deploy additional units. The problem is, like, this one is just very difficult to use. So the first time I saw this card being revealed, I thought that this was the power, and you basically could defeat a unit that had a power and HP added together equal to the number of ready resource you control. So let's say but you deploy a 4-cost leaders and you can kill something that is a 2/1, that has 3 stats in total. Because as you deploy, you spend 1 resource, you kill that guy. But unfortunately, that's not how it works at all. Basically, the unit needs to have the same amount of HP and attack for this to be a target. And unfortunately in the game, so let's say you deploy your 4-cost leader and you play 1 in a billion, you're going to have 3 resources ready, you can defeat something that is a 3/3. And then if you deploy on 5, 4, 4, and so on. Which is very powerful. The problem is that there's actually very few cards in the game that have an equal amount of attack and power. Generally speaking, in Star Wars Limited, units always have more HP than they have attacks. And that means that this card is going to be extremely situational, which is intended because that's why it's called 1 in a Million. So I'm not a big fan of this card because it just is, as I said, just way too situational. Obviously, you want to play this either with a very expensive leader deploy, as obviously Yoda, you get to possibly defeat a leader. And the thing is, like, it's not like it has to be exactly that, by the way. So if let's say I'm deploying Yoda, there needs to be exactly a 6/6 unit in play for this to work. So it's just so incredibly situational. And obviously you can play it in Bail Organa because Bail Organa can actually deploy multiple times a game, which multiply the chances of you being able to use that card. So I don't think this card is good. I think maybe it can be tested in Bail Organa and see how it works. But it's just way too situational. Moving on, we got Crucible. Crucible is actually a pretty interesting card. It's 5/5, so give an experience token to all friendly units. So I think there's 2 main ways to use this card from what we know. The first one is as a replacement for Unity of Purpose. So Unity of Purpose is amazing, but the problem is, like, you don't always find it. And this could be like kind of a replacement. Okay, if you don't find Unity of Purpose, at least you can play Crucible and put an experience token on everybody, and also put a 5/5 in play, which can be quite powerful. So if this card is indeed enough for this type of deck to win the game, whenever you play Crucible, you're not going to win the game right away, but at least win the game over the next few turns, then the card can be really a good addition to those kind of Rex Unity of Purpose deck. With that being said, if it's just does not do enough, then it's just not going to work. So it's going to remain to be seen whether this can work or not. Another context in which I can see this card being played is in a Thrawn Green deck. So Thrawn Green decks, especially a Thrawn Green deck that would be based on trying to generate a lot of tokens early. You know that Thrawn combined with Wartime Trade Official, or Comforted Courier, those cards that basically when they die leave a 1/1 droids in play. Tron ability allows you to double this when defeated, allow you to really swarm the board with a bunch of token. You also have the ability with the Chimera that can leave 2 TIE Fighters, so you leave 4 TIE Fighters behind when he dies, and all that stuff. So this deck can really generate a lot of tokens, and then you can play Crucible, and you can put an experience token on all those units, and then whenever Crucible gets defeated, you can actually give 2 experience tokens because you can double the when defeated effect with Thrawn. Not only that, you can also discount the Crucible using Krennic in order to make it cheaper. So there's a whole kind of cool synergies going on here. I still think this type of deck is just too vulnerable to aggro and just too slow for it to work, but it is definitely an interesting thing. So I'm just going to give it a maybe based on those factors. It's going to remain to be seen whether it's good enough, but I think it is definitely playable. Moving on, we got Restore Freedom. Restore Freedom basically is pretty terrible. It has many problems. The first one being that, so it's a cost reduction card that obviously does card advantage. You have to play this card and then play another card alongside it for this to work. And in order to get this actually good discount out of this card, you need to have 3 heroism units in play, which is a lot. So it's very, very difficult to get actually really significant discount. And I would argue that just getting a 1 resource discount on a unit at the cost of doing card advantage is actually not that great. So really to really get really good value out of this, you need to have like 4 heroism units in play, which is just incredibly difficult. So I just think this card is pretty unplayable. Like I cannot see a scenario where this would actually work, even in a deck like Akbar that can generate a lot of tokens. If you have a full board as Akbar, you're already ahead. So playing Restore for Freedom in order to basically play a cheap 0-1 or something, even that doesn't seem to be particularly exciting. And usually in Star Wars Limited, when you get a relatively big board, that's usually because you've already managed to, you're already in a late game situation, in which case you don't really care about cost reduction. So just a really bad card. Moving on, we got a type of leaders that I've been waiting for in a very long time. If you follow my channel, you know that for a very long time I've been advocating for leaders that are not heroism, that are not villainy, but have 2 neutral aspects as their aspect combination. And DJ is the first leader to ever do this. He's going to be on double cunning, and that means that he cannot play without paying the aspect penalty. He cannot play anything that is heroism or villainy. However, he can actually play double aspect card, and on top of this, single aspect card of another color, which is really, really, really cool. So this is cool because it completely changes the card pool that you get access to whenever you play this card, this leader, which I think is amazing. And I think this is something that, it's obvious that FFG was going to do it at some point, but I was really eager to see at what time are they actually going to pull the trigger on this. It's a little bit weird that they are doing it in a set that doesn't really support that, because in my view, if you're going to be going for double aspect leaders, double neutral aspect leader, you need to have double neutral aspect cards in the game. So for example, cards that have an aspect requirement of like cunning aggression or cunning vigilance, stuff like this. Unfortunately, we don't have this in the game yet, which means that double aspect neutral leaders are going to be more difficult to play in that environment because they are denied the most powerful cards in the game, which are basically heroism plus a neutral aspect combination, and only they get to access double aspect card, which are good, but there are not a lot of them. So if you ask me any times, would you rather have access to the double aspect card, all the aspect plus villainy or heroism, I would much rather have access to heroism, neutral plus heroism or neutral plus villainy, simply because there are just a lot more of them compared to the double aspect card. So I hope that makes sense. But yeah, so that's on the face value. Having a leader like this in the context of a set that doesn't really support it is kind of weird, and I would have preferred Fantasy Flight game to integrate those leaders in a set that really support them. So that's a little bit of a downside, but I have to say that the double aspect combination is not the only exciting thing about this leader. He also has a very cool ability. So basically, you get to play an action, you choose a friendly unit. If you do play a unit from your hand, it costs 1 less. The chosen unit captured it. So the way that works is that you're going to be, let's say you got a 2-drop in play. A 2-drop unit, or any unit in play. You can use DJ's ability to play let's say a 1-drop from your hand, and instead of playing it, you're gonna play it, and then it's gonna get captured. So what's gonna happen is like you play it, it's gonna have a when play effect. It's gonna trigger his when play effect, and then it's gonna get captured. And then you didn't pay anything for this. You basically got an effect for free. So this is really, really powerful, specifically with cheap cards that have when played effect, because then you get to play them for free, capture them, and then do a when play effect. And on top of this, that means that whenever that unit is going to get defeated, you're going to get that unit, the unit that was captured, you're going to get it back. So this is a really, really powerful ability. I don't know if you guys understand how powerful. And I'm going to give you examples of the application. Then the leader deploy is basically 4/6 Saboteur for 6, and it reads when a friendly units are rescued, enter play ready. So the ability may sound really weak, but it's actually very powerful, and I'll explain you why in a minute. So obviously, stats are pretty terrible for a 6-drop, and the Saboteur is kind of like irrelevant. It's fine to have, but it's not like specifically amazing. But I have to say that the ability is so powerful that it just might be worth playing. So let me take through like kind of how I imagine this working out. So I'll give you an example here of a deck. So you play DJ, and you've used DJ Leader's ability. You play Bodywork on turn 2. And then from that point on, you basically, every single turn, you've put a 1-drop underneath Bodywork. And that's possible here. So you got DJ deploying on turn 5, and you've played Bodywork on turn 2, so you get 4 turns to stack 1-drops underneath. Keep in mind that some of those 1-drops actually have when play effect, so you actually benefit the when play effect whenever you are using DJ and you put it underneath. So now you get a Bodywork with a massive group of units, and your opponent is kind of into a tough decision. And all those all this thing, like, you did it for free. You didn't have to spend any resources to actually do that, which is pretty incredible. And then your opponent is kind of a tough pickle, because if he kills Bodywork, all those units are going to be released. So naturally, your opponent is going to be encouraged to not kill the Bodywork. Obviously, I took Bodywork as an example, but it could be anything else. And then if your opponent does not kill Bodywork, then you deploy DJ, and then what you do is that you go a new adventure to blink the Bodywork. Bodywork is going to get bounced back into hand. All the guards are going to be readied. Sorry, all the guards are going to be freed, and Bodywork will come back into play, and then you get to do the discard. So you'll be able to discard if your opponent plays like a bombing run or something that can just wipe the board. You can get rid of it. And then you end up with this board where all those units come into play readied because of DJ's ability. And then suddenly you get yourself a massive swing. And this entire combo thing here only costed you 2 resources, just the cost of the new adventure. And you get yourself an additional discard, and you get to... So, and this is not a difficult scenario to pull off. It's not a difficult scenario to pull off. So let me show you exactly how that looks like in terms of the deck building. I call this the 1-drop Piñata deck. So as you can see, we're playing a lot of 1-drops, preferably 1-drop that have an immediate that have a when play effect, like Criminal Muscles or Reckless Gunslingers, which are really solid 1-drops anyways. And then we play very good 1-drops like Greedo, Kraken V-Wings, which is going to be at 2/2 when he's going to get freed. If it's freed alongside a fighter, which we have a few of. And obviously you don't have to use DJ's ability on 1-drop. It's just nice on 1-drop because it makes the ability free, but you can definitely put some DRK1 prop droid underneath. You can put like some body rook. So let's say you want to destroy an upgrade. You can use DJ's ability, remove an upgrade, put the flank fighters, capture the flank fighters, and then later on, is that unit gets killed, you get a 3/2. It's really good against control specifically. Because then control, like, what do you do? Do you leave the unit alive, or do you kill it and just free another unit? It's just a nightmare to play against. So the main inconvenience of this deck is like is hungry in card. Like, he's going to be playing. Obviously you're going to start the game most likely with 1/1 opening, and then you're going to be using DJ as often as you can. So that's going to empty your end very quick. That's why we play some Smuggle, we play Arm to the Teeth, DR44 Blasters, and Reckless Gunslingers. And then obviously we play all the goodies, the double aspect goodies. We play the new adventure, which is absolutely essential in this deck to do the combo I talked about, but it also synergizes really well because most of the cards in the deck have one play effect. Got Bodywook, we got Disciplining Fang Fighters, we got Cantina Bouncer, we got the new card which I'll talk about later. We got the AT-Ola, if you put in Steel or AT-Ola, we can new and value get it back into play. We got the Mandalorian, and we of course get the Cunning and all the great double aspect cards. So I think this deck honestly looks quite promising. Is this going to be good enough? Obviously the fact that we're not playing, that we are, once again, as I said earlier, cannot play heroism and villainy card is a huge downside. But I think the ability has potential, and it's definitely something that we need to try, but it's something that looks pretty cool in my opinion. So overall, what's my grade on this card? I'm going to give this a maybe. Of course, it's very difficult to know whether DJ will see competitive play out of the box. But keep in mind that honestly, if FFG releases a new set that really enables you, really kind of supports those kind of leaders that are not heroism nor villainy, then DJ is automatically going to become so much better in that context. So you got to keep that in mind as well. So I think it's a really, really cool design. So I was being very critical to FFG into the leader design so far, but this week they really knocked it out of the park between the DJ and the Bail Organa, which are two very interesting leaders that have to kind of have completely different play styles and play patterns than other existing leaders, which I think is great. So just to let you know, you can actually find Stolen AT-Ola for €6 on card market right now, so pick it up before it's too late. I think this card is going to be really strong even after rotation. Moving on, we got Trayus Acolytes, which is just a simple 2/4 for 2 force. So as we know, force units are very relevant right now in the current meta as force 2-drops to get ourselves the force early. And having a 2/4 means that it's obviously going to be difficult to deal with, and obviously this is the primary quality of a 2-drop that has the force is to stay alive, so it can actually give you the force consistently. Obviously, this is strictly worse than Karis, which has a really good when defeated effect on top of being force 2/4. But in my opinion, you can play Trayus Acolyte alongside Karis, since they're in the same color combination, and you're never too few force 2-drops in those type of decks. And in my opinion, if you are talking this in a context of Mother Talzin deck, I think this is better than Acolyte of the Beyond, because, I mean, Acolyte of the Beyond gives you the force even when it is defeated, which is nice, but it has -1 health, and it's not a force unit, meaning that it does not enable forced lightning. It also does not enable fourth throw, but fourth throw has been banned, but it does not enable forced lightning. So I think Trayus Acolyte is a strict upgrade over Acolyte of the Beyond, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm gonna give this a thumbs up because I think it's those villainy force deck are likely to want to play them, and obviously it blue-black is already the best color for force villainy deck anyways. So it also means that it's gonna see play in, like, Yellow Talzin is really getting a huge upgrade from this, because Yellow Talzin was actually struggling getting 2-drops early on. He had Karis, he had Secretive Sage, but then the other 2-drops force were quite bad, so this is going to be great for any Talzin yellow as well. Moving on, we got another legendary. It is called Darth Sion, and this card is horrible. I don't understand really what's the point of this card. So basically, it gets an experience token for each enemy unit that was defeated this phase. On average in a turn, you get to kill 1 unit most of the time. And then it comes out as like a 6/6, which is the same as old Daka. So it is a conditional 6/6 for 5. Yeah, it's very hard to kill a lot of units whenever you have to spend all of your resources on it. Like if you in Game of Star Wars Limited, you can kill like 2 units in the same turn if you are actually spending your resources killing a unit. But in this case, you're not. You're spending your resources playing that card, which doesn't kill anybody. So you have to rely on what you already have on the board to kill stuff. That means I honestly find it very difficult that you're ever going to get it to be a 7/7 for 5. So it's going to be really difficult. Then if you manage to ever have it being 7 power, whenever this unit dies, you get to return it into your hand when it's defeated, which is fine. It's like it's okay, but it's just, I mean, just play all Daka instead. It's so much better. It's a 6/6 without effort, and it also has a powerful when play ability if you have 9 in play. Yeah, I don't understand in what circumstances you would want to play Darth Sion over Old Daka, even in a Force specific deck. Yeah, so it, and even like if you compare this to other 5-drop like Kia di Mundi with already 12 stats worth of stats and a really relevant coordinate ability, what would you ever want to play Darth Sion over those cards? I don't see it. I don't think it's a good card. Moving on, we got Exile from the Force. And this card basically is one of these cards that basically blanks abilities. And this one is better than Imprison. So far the Imprison was pretty much the upgrade that we were using to kind of blank abilities on enemy units. But the fact that this card can do it for only 1 resource is really relevant. He also removes the Force trait, which is very relevant against Force decks. It gives the grid ability to the unit, which is okay. I think grid is not a particularly relevant ability, so I think that's fine. It's a very small downside. But obviously the main problem with this card is like it's a double aspect requirement, double visions. In my opinion, if you're playing a double vigilance deck, you should definitely consider running this card in the main or in the sideboard. Whether the double aspect vigilance is going to see play, and whether those cards are going to need that kind of effect remains to be seen. But I definitely can see this card having some potential, and the fact that it costs half the price of Imprison is definitely relevant. Another thing as well that is really relevant about Exile from the Force, which I completely forgot to mention, is that Exile from the Force actually works on leaders, while Imprison does not work on leaders. So that's another really big upside. So if you are playing double aspect, and I can even see some people, like if ever you want to blank like a leader's ability, I could even see that people playing out of aspect. So I'm giving this a maybe, but honestly, I think we are very close to a thumbs up on this card. I think this card is really nice. Moving on, we got Lost Jedi. Lost Jedi is a card that I think if you ever is going to see play, is only going to see play in one deck, and that's the Han 2 Blue Force deck, because this card does do 2 things that Han 2 Force wants. It's a early play that has the Force traits that allows you to get the Force, and it's a grid unit that you can obviously discount by using Han 2's ability, so you can play this as a 3-1 for 1. So it's a 3-1 for 1 Force in Han 2. With that being said, so Han 2 already access to another card that does this, is the 2-3 grit that we see, a 2-drop 2-3 grits, which is strictly better than this one, but this one has the Force, which is a big deal. The problem right now is that Han 2 does not really rely on double 1-drop opening to play the game. Han 2 basically relies on 2 drops, doesn't rely on double 1-drop. So if ever we are shifting towards a Han 2 Blue Force that runs on double 1-drop opening, this card will definitely make the cut. But until then, I don't see the Han 2 decks kind of completely changing the structure of their turn 1 play just because of this card. So I give this one a maybe. It's a generous maybe. I think it's very unlikely to see play, to be honest, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah, that's the card I was talking about, Aurek Renegade, which is strictly better, but it doesn't have the Force, so that's something. Next, we got Disciple Devotion, is one of those other upgrades that give Sentinels. We got a couple of those already. We have Unshakable Wheel, and we got Protector. Protector is by far the best one, but it's a double aspect. Basically, the problem with this card is like this unit basically only gives Sentinels whenever the unit is exhausted, which is a big downside, because one of the qualities of playing Sentinel units is the security of knowing that even if your opponent takes initiative, you're going to have something to protect you. While Disciple Devotion does not do that, because the unit will not have Sentinels if your opponent have the initiative as the first attack, which I think is a big deal. It does cost 1 less than Unshakable Wheel, but Unshakable Wheel was very overpriced. I just think this card is just not good enough. It's a bit too expensive, and it doesn't really give you the best Sentinel. Honestly, if this was just straight up giving Sentinel without the downside of having the unit being exhausted, then I would think this card would be pretty good. But it's not that, unfortunately. Moving on, we got Hunting Assassin Droids. Not a card that is particularly flashy. There's a 3-4 for 3 stat line, which is not great. It does have rate 2 whenever your opponent's unit is damaged. You can swing for 5, which is pretty nice. I think the main quality of this card is the fact that it has 3 relevant traits. It has Underworld, Drawing, Bounty Hunter, which are 3 traits that you can synergize with. And that's the only redeeming quality of this card, but So I'm giving this a maybe just because he has a lot of relevant traits. And I think that, once again, with... but I don't know if it's going to be quite enough. I'm giving this a generous maybe. It's very generous, but we'll see how it goes. Then we got Warrior of Clan Ordo. And this card is the first 3/3 for 2 that we've had since Battlefield Marine. And you can play it... I mean, we got other 3/3 for 2s, but they all either had very significant downsides, or they had an ability, they had a double aspect requirement. This guy has a downside that you have to disclose a red card whenever it attacks, otherwise you deal damage to your base, but that's a very, very small downside. Disclosing a single red in an aggressive deck is not difficult at all. So this card is most likely going to be a 3/3 for 2 vanilla, and it has a Mandalorian trait, which is a relevant trait as well. So I think it's a good card. I think it's a good card, and the fact that it's available in single aggression means that it's going to be playable in both heroism and villainy, which makes it even more likely to see play. Obviously, 3/3 for 2s are not as good as they used to be, but I still believe this card is quite relevant, and it's going to be quite powerful. Also, Battlefield Marine has the advantage of being heroism and rebel, which in the context of a Sabine deck is way more relevant. So I still think Battlefield Marine is better than this card, even if we disregard the downside, which is, as I said, not really a big downside. But it's still a 3/3 for 2 available to villainy. I think villainy was hungry for more good 2-drops in this color combination. So I think that's really nice. Any decks that basically also, if you're playing like a red, black, green, was a color combination that had really bad 2-drops. So having access to that card in those aspects is also really relevant. So it's a really solid card. Moving on, we got Republic Aurek Starfighter, which is basically a strictly worse version of the Phantom 2. Obviously, single aspect requirement is nice. But yeah, -1 attack here is a pretty big deal, even if we ignore the ability. And also the fact that Phantom 2 has a few of traits that are really relevant with Rebel, Vehicle, Transport, Spectre. So it is just... the only reason you want to play this card is... So Phantom 2 right now only sees plays as hand 2 blue. And in certain version of hand 2 blue. Because it opens up as a 4/1 in space. If you ever build like a hand 2 blue that is only space focused, then I could see this deck wanting to play both of these cards. But that's very unlikely to happen. So let's not give our hopes up here. I think Phantom 2 is just better. And even if hand 2 blue decks, most of them don't even run it, and the people who do don't even run the full 3 of it. Next we got Darth Traya. Really cool card. A 2/5 for 3 that's... And it is the first card in the game that allows you to actually ready a non-leader unit. So that means your leader before it gets deployed, basically. And so that's a really unique effect. The stat line is not great, but it makes up for this with the ability, which I think is quite powerful. And the fact that it has 5 health and comes out relatively early in the game means that it's relatively likely to be able to attack and therefore use the ability. It also has the Force Sith trait, which are 2 really relevant traits, as you know. And in my opinion, it is right now it is the best legendary we've seen. Once again, we don't know if it's guaranteed to see play, but it is the best legendary we've seen so far. So which leader really wants to combine with her? So I got a couple of examples. I think Kylo Ren is a good one. You boost her attack to make her a 4/5. You attack with her. You ready your Kylo. Then you get to use Kylo on another unit. It's a bit Christmas land, but this is the kind of thing that happens early enough in the game that your opponent might not be able to interact with this, and you can just dish out tons of damage with this. In a Kylo yellow deck, yellow aggressive deck, you can really do some crazy stuff with that. And yeah, you empty your hand, but then it doesn't really matter. Then next turn you deploy Kylo Ren as a 5/4. Good stuff. Then we got Muzzle Talzin, also like this card because Muzzle Talzin ability is quite powerful, and especially if you stack it, you do -1/-, you attack, you ready Baltazin, you use the ability again to kill something, and because Darth Traya is Force, you're gonna get the Force token back as she attack, allowing you to use Mother Talzin again. Same idea with Darth Maul, his ability that I think becomes even more powerful when it gets doubled, so I would actually argue that Darth Traya is even better in Darth Maul. And obviously we have the combo with Grand Inquisitor, attack with Grand Inquisitor, ready Grand Inquisitor, use Grand Inquisitor to ready Darth Traya, attack again. And the cool thing is, like, if you get to add another element to this, you get to play the Tragedy of Plagueis on Darth Traya, means that the unit cannot be defeated by having no remaining HP. You can actually use Grand Inquisitor and do the loop of Grand Inquisitor, ready Darth Traya attack, Darth Traya readies Grand Inquisitor, again, ready Darth Traya, and you can do that loop over and over and over and over again until your opponent is dead, and that's a combo. That's a combo that's basically will kill your opponent no matter how many HP he has, no matter how many units he has, because this will also kill every single unit in play on the ground arena at least. So yeah, that's a combo that is really powerful. The only problem with that combo, right, is that you can only play it at earliest on turn 5, whenever you got 6 resources, because you're gonna have to play something out of aspect here. So Darth Traya, I think the best is to have Darth Traya being the one that is out of aspect, so you play her full 5, and then only on the turn, so she comes to play exhausted. But then, the real problem is, like, you basically have all of your resources already exhausted. And then on the turn after, you can play the Tragedy of Plagueis for 5 and then combo off. So this is the problem with this combo, right, is that it comes into play relatively late in the game, and obviously it's quite easy to interact it. It basically dies to any blue removal. Even after Tragedy of Plagueis is played, you can still kill Darth Traya with basically any removal. So yeah, that's the thing. Obviously, there's some cool stuff going on with this combo. You also get to have a power dark side effect alongside the Tragedy of Plagueis and stuff, which I think is... So, yeah, it's a really, really powerful interaction combo, obviously, on a leader that doesn't see any play. So, we're going to be interesting to see what kind of decks we can build around it, but this is by far the most interesting thing going on with this card that I think could be worthy of consideration for a combo deck. It's not a difficult combo to pull off, and it will kill instantly any opponent. It requires 2 cards plus your leaders. Can you build a competitive deck around this? That remains to be seen. The good thing, though, is that the Tragedy of Plagueis is not an awful card to play in a Grand Inquisitor deck anyway, so that's kind of nice. Like, it's not an awful card to play in a Grand Inquisitor deck, kind of regardless, so that's kind of neat. And also I have to say that Grand Inquisitor Blue has been the most preferred archetype. You can also play that Grand Inquisitor Yellow and have the Tragedy of Plagueis being jammed in there for 7. So we'll see how it goes, but it's a really, really interesting piece of equipment here. So that's your area. I'm going to give this one a maybe, of course. It's very difficult to know whether this is going to be competitive play or not. It's very new territory. Those kind of combos are going to be really new, but it's really exciting to see that kind of playstyle being enabled in this set. Something to consider, though, to me, Darth Traya is the best legendary we've seen so far, which is cool, but also a little bit worrying, because that means that even the best legendary we've seen so far, we still don't even know if that's one we're going to see play, so take that what you will with that information. Next we got Libertine, which I should have talked about much earlier. I'm sorry about this. So what does this? So this card is really weird. So basically, it has double aspect requirements, and it comes to play as a 3/7 for 4. But then your opponent gets to capture one of your units whenever this comes into play. So obviously you need to have another unit in play for this to work, or you need your opponent to not have any units. For any deck that is not a DJ deck, this card is unplayable. The downside is way too big. Granted, you don't have to suffer the downside if your opponent doesn't have any unit in play, but most likely they do, and if they do, the card becomes really, really bad, even if you have something small to give to your opponent. it's not worthy of all that trouble. The 3744 is not worthy of that. It's has slightly more stat than other 4-drops in space, but it's not by a long shot. It's not worth that downside. He also has the +1 attack for each captured card it's guarding. So yeah, that's not very relevant in a regular deck because you're not really gonna play that many capture cards in a type of double yellow deck. So yeah, obviously the card is meant to be used in combination with the DJ leader. So the way that works, if you have the DJ leader, is you use DJ's ability as a leader, not deploy leader, to actually capture your own Libertine and playing for a discount for 3 basically. You put it underneath an existing unit, then you let your opponent capture the unit that was guarding the Libertine. And therefore you get to free the Libertine that way. So basically, yes, you still get to make your opponent capture a card, but then you get to play the card for 3, which is a lot better. And you also get to free another unit if there were any other unit that the unit was guarding. And suddenly this card becomes a lot better. And after this, you can actually boost its attack over and over again by using DJ's ability on Libertine afterwards. So in this context, the card becomes a lot more interesting because suddenly we're having a 3/7 that can grow over time for 3 resource, which is pretty insane. That's a lot of stat in space. So obviously the playability of this card is directly dependent on the playability of DJ because this card is absolutely unplayable anywhere else. So yeah, whether or not this card is going to see play, whether DJ is going to see play remains to be seen. But definitely, if you're playing DJ, you should definitely consider playing Libertine. Moving on, we got Cikatro Vizago. Don't really like this card. The stats are just not that great for a 3-drop. Now we expect a 3-drop to either be 4/4 or 3/5s, or if they have 7 stats, either so 2/5 or either 3/4, we expect them to have really powerful ability. And that's not the case with Vizago. You reveal the top card of your deck, an opponent may pay 1. If they don't, draw a card. It might draw. It's once again ability that lets your opponent choose, which is the best case for them. Is not great, and yeah, it's just not really that good. Yeah, and also there's no guarantee you can be able to attack with this because it doesn't even have that great of stats to survival. Moving on, we got Ebon Orc, another 3-drop. This one is interesting. It basically, if you disclose an heroism unit, it gets +2 attack, and if you disclose a villainy unit, give defender -4 attack. The disclosed villainy unit -4 attack is, I think, not super relevant. I think most likely you want to play this in an heroism deck, and if you do, then you get to get +2 attack. If you're playing this in a Palpatine deck that has both heroism and villainy card, then you get to have both effects, which is going to be very situational, that is going to be relevant for you, and I don't think Ebon Walk is the kind of card you should be playing in a villainy deck anyway. But basically, I think the main use of this card is just you play this in a heroism deck, and then it becomes a 5/3, sort of a 3/3 raid 2 for 3 in space, which I think can be really powerful. That's a lot of damage right from turn 2 that goes into space. So I think that's really powerful. The problem is, in the current meta, there's just too many things that counter this card. Between the Falcon, the Supermassive TIE Fighters, and the Blue Leaders, there's just so many cards that will defeat a 3-health spaceship. 3-health spaceship that's simply just not very durable anymore. You want your 3-drop to have at least 4 health, otherwise it's going to get ganged up by so many things. So in my opinion, I'm going to give this one a maybe, because I think a 5/3 for 3 in space is nothing to scoff at. But I just think in the current meta, it's just too vulnerable. Moving on now to Kreia Whispers. This is a card that allows you to draw 3 cards, put 1 card from the top of the deck on top of the deck, and another card at the bottom of the deck. So I know there's some synergy with this, with the certain leaders and certain cards, but nothing justify paying such a high cost for basically doing 0 card advantage, because you're spending 1 card and in the end you're only drawing 1 card. So it's just not a good card. It's too expensive for something that doesn't do card advantage, and the quality card that you get from it is very minimal as well. I know there's some synergies with it, but nothing justify having something that is so expensive. Moving on, we got a much more powerful event. This one is called the Wrong Ride, and it is the first event, I believe, that unconditionally exhausts enemy resource. So this is pretty powerful because if you have the initiative and you play this card, you can pretty much you can completely blank your opponent turn, and 2 resources is a lot. Generally speaking, in Star Wars Unlimited, you have a tendency to resource your cheap card and keep your expensive card. Obviously, if you know you're playing against a deck that is likely to have this card, you might be keeping some cheap card in order to play around it. But even then, it is a huge blow to prevent your opponent from playing it. So you do spend yourself a lot of resources for this to work. You're spending 3 resources to make your opponent exhaust 2 resources, but the fact that this card is usable with plot is also a big deal. That means you can deploy your leader, exhaust enemy resources that will prevent your opponent from answering it. So best example for this would be you are deploying let's say you're playing Boba Yellow, you're deploying your Boba into a spaceship, and you have this giant spaceship. You know you're very vulnerable to card like Rival's Fall. You're playing the wrong side, you exhaust 2 enemy resources, and then your card is completely protected. So for me, this is a summed up because it answers a specific need for specific decks. You're playing Pop Yellow as well. You deploy your leader, you steal opponent units, you exhaust your main 2 resources, suddenly your opponent cannot play Super Laser Blast. This could be a game-winning move, and this could be really powerful. So it's I'm not excited to have this kind of effect in the game. I think this kind of cards are extremely frustrating to play against and not very fun. With that being said, I cannot deny it's going to be a very powerful card. Moving on, we got Sith Assassin, another 2-drops force, available in Villainy, which is great. The problem is that this one is not really good. Yes, it has hidden, but basically you play this on turn 1, opponent plays on turn 1. The fact that it has hidden is pretty irrelevant because unless your opponent plays a 2-drop ambush, there's no way he could have attacked your unit anyways. And as he takes the initiative, he will kill your dude. And in an environment where the most played 2-drops now have 2 4-stat line, this guy will die without leaving anything behind. So it's not a good it's not a good unit. It's not good at giving you the force because the force token because it's not survivable at all. Moving on, we got another mediocre mono villainy force unit. It is Darth Nihilus. This card is very convoluted, but in the end doesn't really do much. The problem is that you don't get to choose where the damage goes, and it actually might go on your own unit. If the unit is a non-vehicle, it might get an experience token from it, but then you also dealt 3 damage to it as well. So it's a small, like, I would much rather you don't deal my damage any damage at all, instead of giving an experience. And whenever it's going to be an enemy unit that deals where you deal the damage to, and that unit actually survives, then you're giving an experience token to that unit, making the ability even worse. The ability is also repeatable on attack, but once again, it's very difficult to control where that damage is going to go. So this unit is just really bad. 6647 is not a good stat line at all. The when play effect is mediocre. The on attack effect is equally mediocre. It's just a bad card. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what kind of deck would want to play this. If you're running a villainy and you want a top end for your force decks, you are much rather playing the Sun. Yeah, it's just a mediocre card. Moving on, we got a new leader. It's called Lama Su. This guy is interesting as basically he wants you to play upgrades, but so far we got basically 3 leaders that are kind of playing with upgrade. We have the Mandalorian. We got the pilot leaders, but this one does not work on friendly vehicles. And then we got the what's it called? Gar Saxon. The Gar Saxon is kind of like he wants your unit to be upgraded rather than playing upgrades. So it's much more efficient to use it with shield. This one is really okay. You want to actually use actual upgrades like lightsabers and stuff like this to make this work. And the problem is that, like, the deck building constraints that are required to make this leader work are very high, and the payoff for doing so is not massive. Getting discounts on upgrade is not that amazing because upgrades are not that expensive anyways, and they're not the kind of things that you are like super eager to play on curve. And also you have to deal damage to actually play the upgrade as well, which is another downside. I know sometimes with grid you can kind of counterbalance this, but it kind of narrows things even more so than when you're doing that. The deployment is quite powerful, being able to play upgrades from your discard pile. It's action cheating and it's also card advantage, but it comes at a very, very big cost because you got a 6-ploy leader that has 3/7 as a stat line, which is abysmal. I already said that 4/7s for 6-deploy leader is not enough, 3/7 is even less so. So I don't think Lama Su is unplayable. He's definitely not awful, but the amount of like upside that he provides for the deck building constraint that he has, in my opinion, does not match, and I think it's not worth it. Next we got Zam Wesell, which is supposed to go directly in the Lama Su deck because this unit gain grit whenever it is upgraded. I don't think, even in a Lama Su deck, I don't even think it's that amazing. And outside of this, it's a horrible card. 1/5 stat line for 2, doesn't really do anything, and she only gets grit whenever she gets upgraded. So yeah, I don't think it's good at all. Next we got Nimble Prowess, and this card is actually pretty cool. It's another card that is supposed to be combined with Lama Su because you get to play it for free, but in my opinion this card is good in general. It allows you to, it +1/+1 for 1 universally, that can work on either that can go in space or on the ground. That by itself is already kind of nice. But then the when play effect is also very significant. Being able to exhaust an enemy unit in the same arena is really powerful for something that is so cheap and gives you a long-lasting +1/+1 effect. So you can compare this, for example, to Extra Asteroid Sanctuary, which exhausts a unit and then give a shield unit to a friendly that costs 3 or less. But Asteroid Sanctuary costs 2 resources, not 1, and only the shield can be given to a unit that costs 3 or less, while Nimble Prowess can be used on anything. So I think this card is quite solid. Like, it's, I find like if you're looking at all the 1 cost upgrades that exist in the game, this is one of the best one we've ever seen. Immediate impact on the game, it's very cheap, solid extra value. I think there's a wide variety of decks that would want to play a card like this. It's really powerful. Then we got Zinton Moj, 4/5 for 4, but with a significant upsides or dealing 2 damage to base whenever you take the initiative. The ability is quite strong. So in mono red there are other contenders like Dryden Voss, for example, for 5 for 4 mono aggression that also is potentially better. But Zinton Moj, if you take, so it's hard to say if this is going to be played. It's definitely on the verge of being like, it has solid stats, and if it doesn't get dealt with right away, you take initiative, you deal 2 damage to your base, and then you get to attack with a 4/5, which I think is very significant. I don't know if this is going to be good enough to see play, but it is definitely in the realm of playability for Constructed. And I think that after rotation, when competition gets less fierce, it's definitely going to see play, in my opinion. But before rotation, it's not clear. Then we got aggressive negotiation, which allows you to attack with a unit and get +1 for each card in your hand. If you are playing a deck that has a lot of ways to draw cards, this can act as a very, very powerful finisher. It is expensive, but for a finisher, you don't really care how much it costs. The fact that you get to attack with a unit and get the attack bonus in the same motion is very powerful. And basically, to make this card as good as Surprise Strike, you only need to have 3 cards in hand, which is not that difficult to do. And the fact that it costs one more than Surprise Strike is once again not super relevant. And sometimes it can be way more than +1 attack. So if you're playing a mid-range or an aggro deck that is able to draw a lot of cards, this is definitely a consideration. So I'm going to give this one a maybe. Moving on, we got Undercover Operation. This allows you to ready a unit that costs 3 or less and then create a spy token. This card is way overpriced. Spy token aren't that good. And ready a unit that costs 3 or less is just not that good either. So 2 effects that are pretty mediocre together don't create a better effect. Actually, I would even argue that you would rather have a card that does one thing well rather than a card that do 2 things poorly. And this card is also quite overpriced, so not good. Then we got Trade Route Taxation. I've already talked about this card during my spoiler reveal. I got the chance to spoil this card to the community. So I'm not going to review it, but I gave it a thumbs up. If you want to get more details on it, check my video on it. Same for Ornithata. I give this card a maybe. And once again, check out on the previous video what it was all about. And then Confidence and Victory, I give this one unlikely to see play. So here goes. So after my spoiler reveal, we've got some last minute spoilers as well that got added by Fancy Flight Games. Cinta K was one of them. And this card is actually pretty powerful. So what she does is that whenever she gets played, you get to attack with a unit, which basically is an action cheating. So she's quite expensive for a 5/5, but she also has plot, which I think is very relevant. So what I find this card to be quite powerful is, obviously you want to play this card in a deck that has a 6-cost deployment leaders or a 7-cost deployment leaders. And the way that works is, so for example, you play this in something like a Boba, so you're playing Boba Data Vaults, you get to deploy Boba onto a spaceship, you get to play her, and then you get to attack with a Boba. And that's basically triple action cheating because you get 3 action in one motion. You get to play a card, deploy your leader, play a card, and attack with your leader in the same motion, which is very relevant. And on top of this, you're leaving behind a 5/5. That's very, very powerful. So this card is one of these cards which are going to make expensive leaders far more difficult to interact with. Also, another example with this would be like an Anakin Skywalker. You get to play her, you deploy Anakin, you play her, you get to slap with Anakin right away for some incredible amount of damage on the opponent. It's a great finisher, but even if it's not as not a finisher, just literally deploying your leader and putting a 5/5, attacking with that leader, and then getting a 5/5 alongside it, card advantage and huge tempo swing is very powerful. So I'm going to give this one a thumbs up. I know the card is not flashy, but it's actually very powerful in those type of decks. Moving on, we got Sudden Ferocity. I don't think... just a really awful upgrade. The only saving grace of that card is that it has plot. I hope that there's going to be... I think there's better plots to play in the game, generally speaking. So, not good. Finally, we got Evil is Everywhere. And this card basically allows you to defeat a unit depending on the amount of villainy unit you have in play. The problem of this card is that if you have a bunch of villainy cards in play, you are already winning the game, most likely. So that makes the card very difficult to use. The other problem with the card as well is that if you get a bunch of... even if you get like 3 villainy in play, this will only kill unit that costs 3 or less, which is not that great. In order to kill something very significantly large, you need to have like 4 or 5 villain units. That is very difficult to do, even for a deck like... some people have been talking, this could be a good removal in a Vader space deck, because Vader space deck puts a bunch of tokens, and all those tokens are villainy. The problem is, would you rather just... like there's if you are at the stage of the game where you got a bunch of upgrades, first of all, you're already winning the game most likely, and there are far better ways to actually stabilize, to kill units. You can just play like an Overwhelming Barrage or Craving Power, will just do pretty much kill anything, because you are very likely to either have your leader deploy or you have something very large. So it's win more, and it is very situational even in the right decks, so I don't think it's good. Then we got Cruel Commandos. Cruel Commandos is probably a fine draft card, but for Constructed, if you're really looking for a relatively expensive Sentinel unit to block the board, you would just much rather play Pirate Battle Tank. I think Force 5 is a better start line for a Sentinel than the 5/5, and the fact that it has Smuggle is very nice, which makes this card can actually be flexible. And even Pirate Battle Tank doesn't see play, so not gonna see play in Constructed. Smuggle is just so much more relevant for a card like this than Overwhelm. Then, last but not least, we got the Director Krennic. So it is yet another legendary, and the artwork on this one is really, really cool. And Director Krennic is quite unique because he's the biggest ground sentinel in the game. Like, there's no ground sentinels in the game that comes even close to having the same stat line. Unfortunately, is horrible. Why is he horrible? Because, first of all, he has no immediate impact on the game. That means if he gets removed by an upgrade, by removal, or anything like this, he doesn't offer you anything else than just blocking the balls and Sentinel. So it's very, very risky to play a 9-drop and knowing that if this 9-drop gets dealt with, you got nothing back. Almost any other 9-drop in the game, you will get something back. If you're playing a Kreia Dragon, you're able to trigger his ability once to kill something or deal a bunch of damage to base. If you're playing like an Avenger, at least you killed something as it came out. Director Krennic doesn't have any of that. So playing him against anything that is mid-range or control is a massive gamble. And unfortunately, it's also terrible against aggro because it's way too expensive. There's no way you're going to be able to play a 9-cost card against aggro. Unless, well, yeah, it's almost impossible. The ability that allows you to discard card whenever he gets attacked, it's kind of like if Director Krennic comes to play and your opponent doesn't have an answer to it, it's already kind of, it's already good enough. Like you already have A10 that just completely block the ball. The ability is kind of like, yeah, whatever. So it's just completely overpriced. It has no immediate impact on the game, and it is very situational as well, blocking only the Grand Arena. I don't see any realistic deck that would want to run this, at least in constructed right now. So it's not good. And it is yet another legendary that is not going to see competitive play, which is crazy, because now we have more than half of the legendaries being revealed in the set, and I can tell you right now, I haven't given a thumbs up to a single one of them. The best one we've seen is the 253, the Darth, I forgot our name, that has the combo with Grand Inquisitor because of that combo potential. But that's a maybe, that's not a guarantee. There's no legendary that we've seen so far that is guaranteed to see any play, which is absolutely crazy. I don't understand this. I don't understand what FFG is trying to do here. I don't understand the purpose of making legendaries so weak. It's gonna hurt sales. I'm going to plan to buy booster boxes of this set just because I want to support my local game store. But honestly, from a purely financial standpoint, I cannot advise anybody to buy booster box from this set. There's literally no value. There's no legendaries that are good. And commons and uncommons are going to be really easy to acquire just by simply drafting or just going to your pre-releases. Like, there's no reason to buy booster box on top of this because there's nothing. The reason why people buy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 booster boxes is because they want to get their set of legendaries. Why would you ever... There's no legendary that are good in the set, so it's so weird. It just doesn't make any sense from a financial standpoint to do that. It's gonna make like the booster opening experience very miserable, where you get a legendary, you go like, oh, whatever. It's just, I just don't understand. Like, once again, I don't want legendaries to be auto includes like Luke on Vader, but between Vader, Commander with the First Legion, and Director Krennic, there's something in between, right? There's definitely ways to make strong legendaries that are not auto included in every single deck, and we've seen that in the past. We've seen many legendaries in the past, but unfortunately in previous set that's true, but it's even more true with this new set. There's simply too many legendaries that are unplayable, which is just not normal at all. Last thing I want to talk about as well is that I think the big thing that we've seen from this reveal is that there's going to be a lot of plot cards that will make Leader Deploy a lot more difficult to interact with. And to be quite honest, I'm not sure if I'm excited about this. I'm not sure if it is a good thing for the game that we're going to have those very powerful plot cards that will basically prevent the opponent from just interacting with your leader. Especially with leader pilots, which, as we know, are extremely powerful when they don't get interact with. Any of the three plot cards that I'm showing here on the screen will make interacting with pilot leaders very difficult, and I don't think this is going to be positive for the game. I think it's going to make the game more uninteractive, more difficult to counter whatever your opponent is doing, and it might push the pilot leaders over the edge. And if it's not doing it this set, it's very likely we'll do it after rotation, where cards like Confiscate will no longer exist, and then you got those pilot leaders are going to be completely dominating. And the thing is, like, it's not going to be easy to ban. It's not like a single leader is going to be a problem. Oh, you just ban this leader because it's a problem. Like, we have an entire set made of pilot leaders. It's going to be very difficult to interact with those cards in play. So I'm a little bit worried about this. Obviously, I don't want to be doom and gloom before anything happens, and we're definitely going to have to see more to see exactly how it works. But I'm definitely a little bit worried about this going into this week. Going back into the positive, this week has given us a lot of very cool and unique leaders that are going to be super different. I don't know if it's going to be the case or not, but I really, really hope that Bail Organa and DJ will be competitively playable, because those leaders will really change the way we play the game. And I think that's fantastic that FFG is willing to get into those uncharted territories. And I really hope that those leaders will see play. Remains to be seen if that's going to be the case or not. And yeah, thank you so much for following that video. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. And I'll see you on Tuesday probably for the report of the tournament that are happening this weekend, and specifically the sector qualifier Portland, which is going to give us a real first big picture of the current meta without fourth throw. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.